Let's start with the obvious. Life is brief. At the beginning, it feels so long. I know some of us are going to really have to think back a long time for this one, but remember when you were just, can't wait till I'm 13, when I'm a teenager. And then it was, I want to be 16, then I want to be 18, I want to be 21. Got to 25, that was the last insurance break, at least back in my day. And then it's like, oh, it's starting to get faster now, isn't it? Now, 65 is fun because that's when you get your Medicare. But other than that, you stop looking forward to the days coming. So in the beginning, it feels kind of long. And then you start learning what James 14 says, where he says, what is your life? You're just a vapor. You're here for a little while and then it vanishes away. When you think there have been 106 billion people on planet Earth, and if you were to start listing them all by name that you knew, you would probably struggle to get 100 names down. I think you could get 100, but you would start finding, oh. And when you compare that 100 to 106 billion people, what are we? We're nothing, which is kind of relieving in some ways. So he said eternity in our heart. There's something in us that longs for something more than just what this physical life offers. And I know it's not uncommon for a lot of us to say, look, if I could find a pill and live to be 500, I don't know I'd take it. I have really, really enjoyed life, and I hope you can say the same thing, that you've really, really enjoyed life. But the idea of being here 500 or 1,000 years, or getting older than Methuselah, that just doesn't have the appeal that we thought it had when we were 12. It's like, it's been good. I'm not complaining a whole lot. We've had our ups and we've had our downs. But there's something in the heart of man that says there's more, isn't there? Isn't there more than getting up in the morning and making your breakfast and toddling around and doing the things you do and going to bed and getting up in the morning? And then there is more. So we're in the world, but we're not really of the world. And you don't want to waste your life chasing after the wrong things. You want to prioritize the spiritual. That's where the satisfaction for Ecclesiastes 3:11, that's where you're going to start making that contact. But at the physical level, yeah, you look like you're having a great life. Folks in Hollywood, most of them look like they're having a great life for a moment when they're on TV. And then when you hear their private stories in the background, you find out, oh, these people are pretty messed up. They didn't get the right focus is what happens. So we want some significance. We want purpose. Matthew 16:26 says, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their own soul? If you miss the spiritual connection, if it's all about money, 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 fame, success, popularity, being a big influencer on social media or something, I'm not saying those things are wrong. I'm saying they leave a big gaping hole over here in the spirit, because basically what a lot of people have done is they have put their soul on hold in order to go chase the physical things of life, thinking the physical things of life would bring them the deepest satisfaction. Now, the physical things of life will bring a degree of satisfaction, but they'll never bring the deepest satisfaction. If you're a multimillionaire, but you have no one to share that life with, and I don't mean people who just want to take what you have and ride on your coattails. I mean people who you're really intimately connected with and share life with. Those people who would be with you if you did not have multiple millions of dollars. If you don't have that, then the whole spiritual realm is just sitting over there empty, a big gaping hole, aching. And of course, the money just does the distraction thing. So what I want to encourage you to do is focus on what really counts. And I'm going to say spiritual will, of course, work that out a little more as the lesson goes. But 2 Corinthians 4:13, Paul said, we look at the things which are, we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen, for the things which are seen are temporary, or temporal, as the New American Standard says. So pause there a moment. Everything you can see is temporary. It's going away. Now, I know that's a little hard to see because what we're looking at on the average lifespan is 80 years. That use Psalms 90:10. And so it doesn't feel so temporary right now. Of course, as we get further along in life, we get a better sense of that temporality of those things. But if you can see it, If you can touch it, if you can feel it, if you can taste it, if you can hear it, all of these things that are the five senses, it's temporary. It's not hanging around. Now, again, I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong. I'm just saying be aware this is temporary. This will pass. But the things that are not seen, they're eternal. That's where you want your priority focus is on those things that are not seen, on the eternal. That's where you're going to lay up the treasures in heaven. That's where you're going to have your eternal value. That's where you're going to find that lasting significance. And the neat thing is it starts now. When you really believe it, you really understand it, and you're really doing it, then when you pillow your head at night, you're like, that was a good day invested. And as one writer put it, he looked at the past as silos, and all the silos are full. Question is, what are they full of? And when they're full of days productively used, then you sit back and you pillow your head at night and you smile. Most of us, when we pillow our head at night and we feel like we had one of those days where we wasted every minute and all we did was spin our wheels and nothing went right that whole day, usually don't pillow your head at night and go, wow, that was a good day. Usually you go, well, I hope tomorrow's better than that. Colossians 3:22, whatever you do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men. So now when we talk about spirituality, I'm not talking that you need to drop by the building 6 times a week and come down to the front and have a special prayer time with just you and Jesus in the dark of the auditorium. You know, there are places that have a similar setup to that. In the old days, they used to have what they called a prayer room that would stay open 24/7. And it was just a little private prayer room so you could get away and do nothing but pray and not be interrupted, ideally, was the thing there. But when I'm talking about spirituality, I want you to have prayer multiple times a day, but that is not the thing I'm talking about where you almost become a monk, shave your head and join a monastery or something like that. What I'm talking about is taking whatever you do and use it as your avenue to eternity. Now, I won't belabor this point, but obviously we're talking about something that is moral. If what you're doing is immoral, you cannot use that as your avenue to eternity. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. But as long as it's moral, there ought to be a way where you can use it as your avenue to eternity. Because Paul said, whatever you do your work heartily as for the Lord. So if you are in something and you can't figure out, how can I do this heartily as though I'm doing it for the Lord? Then you got a problem. You may need to recalibrate, back up and look at that particular thing again. Otherwise, whatever you're doing, do it as your avenue to eternity. Whatever you're doing, use it to lay up treasures in heaven. Whatever you're doing, this is your audition for eternity. Now, we do really need to break this one down a minute because getting down to the simplicity level of daily life is a little bit tough. When we think of spiritual things, we're thinking, well, I did my Bible study this morning, or I spent my morning time in prayer, however you set your prayer times up, or you had your meditative time, and then I went to visit the sick, which, that's always a good thing. And I made a phone call or two, and those are always good things. But you see, those things we're listing off are not whatever you do. There's some things you did, and they're all good. But he said, whatever you do. So let's go to marriage, which I think would be a little easier to illustrate. Are you married? If you're married and you're the husband, then your role is a husband. Whatever you do your work as a husband heartily, not as for your wife, but as for the Lord. And so if I went to Ephesians 5:22, he would say, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Nurture and cherish her as your own flesh. Now, that's a paraphrase, but go read Ephesians 5, start at 22, go all the way through 33. And so the husband, as he's loving his wife, I hope this doesn't come across wrong, but she's secondary. She is not the primary goal here. The primary goal is to do the role of a husband as though I'm doing it to God, because this is my audition as a husband. And so I'm auditioning for eternity, so to speak. And so it's, okay, here she is, and this is really cool. I like her. But there's another level up. And my husband role is not just here, me and her, but it's me, her, and God. And then she can do the same thing. Wives, submit to your husband, to the Lord, and that kind of thing. And her submission is not just to please the old grumpy guy. It's to do her work heartily, though she's doing it for the Lord. Parents have such an awesome opportunity to take some of the most mundane, trivial, repetitive things in life and do them heartily for the Lord. You know, parents, raise your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, Ephesians 6:4. And you go, okay, I got to teach them the Bible. Sure, you got to teach them the Bible. But let's go back to the husband. He's also a dad. Now, when he nurtures and cherishes his wife because he knows he's accountable to God, and he's doing it not so he won't go to hell, but because he loves God and he wants to please God and he wants to please her in between also, what is the child learning? A lot of the problem we have in America today is a lot of young people never saw a healthy marriage exemplified in their life. They saw dysfunctional marriages. They heard mom and dad fuss and fight all the time. They just saw a negative thing, and they don't know what a healthy marriage should look like. What I'm trying to say is, husbands, when you're loving your wives as Christ loved the church and your kids looking at you at the same time, all of that fits into whatever you do, even though it's just a little mundane stuff. That's still, that's really, as the old timers would say, where the rubber meets the pavement. The little time outs you take with the kids, the attention you pay to your kids, the instruction, the love, the care, all of that fits. Now we can do the same thing in the workplace. Do your job as though you're doing it for the Lord, because that's the instruction to employees, and well, it was slaves back then, but that's the way you do it. So you got a regular old job. My job was to I worked at Ball Plastic for a while. Most boring job in my life I ever had. And I have to be honest with you, I didn't quite learn this one at Ball Plastic. But the idea would have been every 30 seconds an empty frame came around. My job was to stick a big old piece of plastic in it and shut some clamps and punch a button. Well, that's exciting. Tell me how you do that one for the Lord. But if you can figure that out and you start to see whatever I do it heartily as though I'm doing it for the Lord. And then the activities of daily life, I'm in the world, absolutely, but I'm not of the world. And just doing what I do is part of my spiritual development, my spiritual contribution. And it goes so much deeper other than just whatever little task you have in mind. This is the tricky part, I think, is learning to see whatever you do, you're doing it heartily as for the Lord. You're driving down the road, you're driving down the road for the Lord. How are you driving? Uh-oh. Did some of you just go, wait a minute, I need to change something here? About, road rage and what have you, things a lot. Just, you're walking through Walmart. You're walking through for the Lord. You're letting your light shine. Those kind of things. So whatever you do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than the man. You always have God in mind. And if you can get this down to that trivial point, and I'm belaboring it a little bit, I know, but if you can get it down to that little point, now you're making a connection that I think a lot of people never make. And you get to bring a lot more depth into your mundane life, so to speak. So James 4:14 again, he said, "You're just a vapor." It's brief. It's gone so quick. So I want you to do a little thought experiment with me. We don't have one single light well enough to really make something out of it. But what would be neat is if we did have a spotlight. I'd get you to come up and stand in the spotlight, and we'd take note of your shadow for a minute. Really, examine your shadow, and then have you step out of the spotlight. And then what I want to do on the next part of this experiment is find the proof that your shadow was actually in that spot. What residue did it leave behind? What proof is still on the floor that your shadow was there? And of course, the answer is there is no proof. There's nothing left there. When the shadow's gone, it's gone. That's us. Now, we get a little longer time frame, but the fact is, after I die, nobody's going to remember me. Now you go, wait a minute, preacher. Somebody's going to remember. Yes, a little while. As long as Archer and Matt are alive, they'll remember Grandpa a little bit. And should I get to meet my great grandkids, they'll remember me a little bit. But after a certain point, how many of you knew your great grandparents? I mean, knew them, interacted with them. Now, some of you can go, oh, I did. And you have memories. Okay, so that shadow's still lingering just a little bit. How many of you knew your great grandparents? Probably none of us get to say yes to that one. How many of you can even call their name? And now you're going, oh, wait a minute, I saw that on a family tree once. Just a minute, preacher, I'll remember it. Yeah, their shadow's gone. And if you want to go great grandparents, that shadow's long gone. That's the brevity of life. And we lose track of that. We're just a shadow. That's all we are. We're a vapor. But because we do linger 70, 80, 90 years, I heard a podcaster say the other day, I'm into all the medical podcasts. I think they're totally cool. And this guy says the first person to live to be 150 years old has already been born. That the medical changes we are seeing and witnessing, the odds are there are people alive today that live to be 150. Which gets me back to another question. Oh no, that's a long time. That's kind of like, I don't want to graduate. I don't want to graduate. Can I just stay in college forever? No. Even if that is true on the cutting edge of medical research and stuff, and there are people alive today that will live to be 150, it's still nothing. What is that in 6,000 years of recorded civilization? It's nothing. What is that in comparison to eternity? It's absolutely nothing. So we're brief. We're not here very long. And that's either exciting or it's depressing, depending on where you're at. So if you're kind of thinking, oh man, I don't like that, then that's probably telling you you're a little too entangled in the world. But if you're setting your mind on heaven and things above, like Colossians 3, verse 1 and 2 would say, and you can sing, and when you sing, this world is not my home, I'm just a passing through, my treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue, and your heart bubbles up and it gets a little bit excited because you know that's exactly what's going on and that's the journey you've got planned out, then brevity of life is not depressing. So much of it just depends on where your heart's really set. So we number our days that we may present to God a heart of wisdom. And that's what we're out to. So what we want to do is we want to learn how to take the days we have and be as wise with them as we can with a view to eternity and really plan them. Really be deliberate about it. So if you knew you were going to die noon next Saturday, it's going to happen. This is the way it's going to work. For some reason we know it. What would you do the next 7 days? How would that change it? And it would change it. We all know it would. It's kind of hard to get that mindset though, isn't it? How many of you know it's possible for you to die in a car wreck on the way home today from church services? Everybody go, well, yeah, of course it's possible. But it just doesn't hit, does it? But if somehow we knew and there was no way out of it, Saturday noon is my last breath. End of story. All of a sudden everything changes. If you can get that, then that's what our heart of wisdom does for us. We number our days because we know they're limited. It's just a little bit of mystery where they end. And so we're going to start saying, okay, I want to invest each and every one of them in a way that really sets my mind on heaven and sets me up for heaven. Because if you miss heaven, you just miss all that there is, right? So we must work the works of him who sent us as long as it's day. Night is coming when no one can work. Now, it's just too obvious that our time is limited. I think that's part of the problem. Everybody dies. I know I'm going to die, but it is so commonplace it really doesn't sink in for some reason. Now and then if you catch a moment where it does, that'd be great. And when it does sink in, don't get anxious about it. Just let it focus you. How can I use what I have left to really lay up treasures in heaven? Because I don't care about leaving anything behind. And think about the people who left some really fabulous stuff behind. How much do you really think about them? How much do you really care? Alexander the Great, hey, that was a really cool story. Okay, end of story. I got something else to go do. All the pharaohs, pyramids, that's really cool stuff. Okay, cool story, but I got something else to go do. You see what I'm saying? Is even if you get a footnote in the history pages, people don't care. People look at that and go, yeah, that was kind of cool. And then they go chasing whatever they want to chase. And the sad thing is for all that, let's say, Alexander the Great accomplished, people will kick his story to the side so they can go look for the next cute meme on Facebook. Now, I like memes, so I'm not against memes. I'm just saying, wait a minute. Alexander the Great conquered the world of his day. There were no lands left to conquer. The story is he sat down and cried because there were no more enemy to beat. Oh, but did you see that little meme with the puppy and the coffee? And that little meme about the kitty cat or whatever is more entertaining and exciting and energetic than all that Alexander the Great did so many years ago. Now, my point is, that's us. Take your greatest, most fabulous accomplishment, and somebody's going to gladly kick it to the curb to read a meme about the latest political situation or a meme about, well, I like the coffee ones, but you get the idea. So the physical level, it's all just vanity. That's Ecclesiastes 1:2. Vanity of vanity, all is vanity, says the Lord. And so unless you learn to do what Paul said earlier, whatever you do it heartily, as for the Lord. Unless you learn to take the vanities of daily life and interweave them with your serving the Lord, then they're all just totally 100% vanity. But if you can weave them together, then you have learned to choose eternity through the mundaneness of life. And I think that becomes magical. I don't think we're belittling spirituality at all, because if good, great spirituality requires great, amazing, fabulous, noteworthy headline news events in my life and your life, we're not getting spirituality, are we? But if spirituality can be as simple as loving my wife as Christ loved the church, and she says, as she said to me yesterday, oh, on your way home, can you pick me up a gallon of milk? And if I can pick up, well, it's actually a half gallon. We get old. We don't like the big old heavy gallons anymore. If I can make that a joyful service as unto the Lord, instead of, how a lot of husbands do. My stupid wife went to Walmart. I don't know why she can't get her head together. Had a list the whole time. Now I got to walk through the store and stand in that stupid line with all these stupid people while I get a gallon of milk. Miss the whole thing, right? The mundaneness of life is always going to be the priority in life. The majority, excuse me. And if I can learn to do it with service to God, then I'm obviously in the world, but I'm not of the world. I'm working toward eternity. I'm laying up treasures in heaven. So I got all this earthly bling. It's everywhere. I know that. All things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful, but not all things edify. I want to prioritize heaven in everything. Okay? Everything. I'm at McDonald's. I just ate my Big Mac, my fries, had my second Diet Coke, which is full of chemicals. You don't need it, but it tastes so good. Go Diet Dr. Pepper. And I'm getting ready to leave the table, and I'm like, hey, I got stupid kids behind the counter. They can clean up my trash. Bad idea. Don't do that. Do unto others, you'd have to do unto you, right? So if you're that kid behind the counter working for minimum wage, what do you want customers to do? What would you prefer they do? At least make a decent effort and pick up their own trash. So I'm going to pick up my own trash. I'm going to wipe a couple of crumbs off, and I'm going to drop it in the trash. I'm going to leave my tray on the top, and I'm going to walk out the door. You go, yeah, but they just, no, that's part of it. That is part of taking the mundaneness of life, the most simple things in life you can think of, and prioritizing heaven, because when we do that with God in mind, we are Christians, we let our light shine in every single way we can think of, then he looks at it and goes, that was good. Same way we do it with our kids. See kids pick up some trash, you go, it was really nice of you. Okay. I want God to look down at me in every situation. He was thinking that was good. That was nice of him. That's prioritizing heaven. So if you gain the whole world and forfeit your soul, it's like you wasted it all. It's all sand castles anyway. It's all going to wash away. And in another 50, 100 years, it'll be collapsing. It'll be like the empty lots around Pine Bluff. I don't know how many there are, but I know there are a lot. And I can't help but do this little philosophical thing every time I see one of the houses falling in or the empty lot there now. I think, one day that was a brand new house. Somebody stood at the door and they walked in for the first time. And it was their dream place. Go down on, let's say 6th Street. There's that old house, where it's just caving in now and it needs to be dozed. At one day that was brand new and that was somebody's wonderful dream. And they thought they had hit the jackpot when they moved into that big, beautiful house. And it used to be a big, beautiful house. And now it's a piece of trash and nobody even wants to torch it. Earthly things. It's just the morning dew. It's here just a little while. It doesn't make it to noon. So you want to get some full understanding of this as best you can. This is more than just an academic type of fact. It's got to be an emotional impact. You've got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. You want all three involved. And so we want to fall in love with eternity and fall in love with pursuing eternity through every little bitty thing that we do. C.S. Lewis said, people are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Now look at the two in comparison. Infinite joy is offered us, and people are more interested in drink, sex, and ambition. That doesn't have to be those exactly. Drink, just distraction. Let me numb myself so I'm really not connected to the world. Sex, think any physical pleasure. I mean, any. Just something you enjoy that feels physically good, that doesn't even have to be right or wrong. And then ambition, climbing some worldly ladder. And this is where people focus themselves when infinite joy is being offered. It is really, really, really. We were kids and we were like third, fourth, 3 or 4 years old. We were making our mud pies and we thought we'd really accomplished something. We took Mama, look what I made, And Mama's always nice and said, oh, honey, that's really sweet. It's a piece of dirt. Ain't nobody going to eat that. That's all drink, sex, and ambition is. It's a mud pie. And people get totally consumed with it. So you got your fool's gold versus pure gold. What you want is the abundant life of John 10:10. That is really what we're after. So we have this great audition of life. Since all these things will be destroyed in this way, what sort of people ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? And it's more than just not sinning. I think we preachers have done our audiences a horrible disservice in focusing on don't sin, don't sin, don't sin. Obviously, that's a necessary element. But the success of growing spiritually, 1 Peter 1:15, is to learn to fall in love with I'm going to be as holy as God is holy. That's the pursuit. I'm chasing after it. Matthew 6:33, seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Or 1 Corinthians 11:1, learning to imitate Christ. Christianity is not just a don't sin proposition. Christianity is a learn to be the best you can be proposition. And the 2 Peter 3:14, I need to quote it more often. That's where he says we're going to present ourselves spotless and blameless before the Lord. And that's more than just not sinning. As James would say, he who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. And so it's not just not doing the ugly, obvious, nasty things in the world. It's honing a spiritual mentality, heart, insight that keeps pressing on the upward way, even though the world doesn't understand it. Revelation 20:15, if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. What happens here is it's the missing of the relationship with Christ and God. And I think that's what hell is. I think hell and fire and all that, I think that's obviously biblical. But every good and perfect gift comes from the Father above. And hell is the total separation from God. And people miss the relationship they were created for, because that's what we were created for. When Christ would say, Abba, Father, our best equivalent to that is daddy. And I know in our culture, some people would kind of get uppity. You can't say daddy to God. Well, yes, you can. Now, don't do it flippant, but that's the relationship we were created for. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to prepare to meet our God. We sing a song about that. And so that's everything. I'm planning on meeting my Father. He set this up, life the way it works. He set it up with all its mundaneness. He set it up with all its little repetitiveness as an audition of what's really in us, as an opportunity to learn to seek Him in whatever you do it heartily as for the Lord. That's the audition of life. So every day it's an opportunity. The world's going to try to distract you, and there are a lot of distractions out there, and not all of them are immoral. A lot of them are just fine. They just don't lead you the right direction. The world's going to make a lot of empty promises, and it is just amazing. It was Jim Carrey, who had great success as a comedian and a movie actor, and he said after he had experienced it all, he said in a speech, he said, I wish everyone could have all the money and fame they think they want just once, so that they would realize it's not what they think it is. Now, I think that's pretty impressive coming from a person who has been on the other side of fame and prosperity. Because we who are not on that side have some crazy fantasies about what it is. But when you listen to the people on the other side, it's like, oh, so you don't have to worry about your bills. That's about it. Tony Robinson said it this way. He said, money might not answer all of life's problems, but at least you can arrive in style. I think, well, that's clever. There's some humor in that. But when it comes to me having to go to my loved one's funeral, I don't care how I arrive. That's a bad day. We can arrive in a limo. You can helicopter me in. But when I lose a loved one, I lost a loved one. I don't care how much money I got in the bank. And I think most of you'd probably agree with me. We'd give all that money in the bank to have that loved one back. The world, a lot of empty promises. And because we lack experience, we can get caught up and entangled in them. So we have a choice to make day by day. And we do make it day by day. What I'm trying to get you to see is that while we're in the world, we're not of the world, and it's in all those little bitty, mundane, repetitive things. And one of these days, you're going to look back on your life, and you're going to see. You are going to see. And I hope what you see is silos full. And as you look back on the silos that are full of your past life, you go, that was pretty good. I'm ready to meet my Maker. Be like Paul said, I'm ready to go. I'd rather be with him than here. I don't know the absolute secret for that. I know the scriptures we've looked at. And I know if you haven't made that connection, God's calling yet. He's still looking for you to come home. If you haven't found it, if we can help you in a public way, let us do so. All together we stand and sing.